Okay, now let's get into the nitty-gritty of what we're going to do this week. This is called activity-based accounting, which is a little bit different. Okay, so my puppy came in. Let's pick up where we left off. Here's step one. We need to identify the activities, and now this is those activity pools we were talking about. So we look at all of this and we say, where's the overhead coming from? What activities are causing this? And we find out machine setup, because you have setup people, and all the direct, indirect material or labor that they would involve. You have machine repair, you have factory maintenance, you have engineer salaries, and you have assembly line power and the heating and lighting utilities. So a little bit different way of looking at this. We're going to assign budgeted hours, and then we're going to apply that to the budgeted factory overhead. So this is kind of what this looks like. So we're saying that machine setup is $700,000. Machine repair is 1.3 million. Factory maintenance is 800,000, and engineer salaries is 1.2. So this is our indirect labor, and this becomes our factory utilities, assembly line power and heating and lighting. So you can see all of these costs amount up to 4.8 million, which is what we had in a previous one. So that's step one, and that's my puppy dog. And now we're going to set them up in pools, okay? Cost pools. So you've got one called craftsmanship, you have one called setup, you have one for design modification, and you have one for plant services. And then we're going to assign each one of those previous activities to one of these pools. And this kind of shows you who gets what. So craftsmanship is called, I don't know why they use that's a strange name, is used for the assembly line power. And we say it's 30,000 direct labor hours. Setup, machine setup is set at 200 batches, and it's going to cost a total of $2 million. You have design modification, which is actually the engineer's salaries, 1.2, and there are 10 design modifications throughout the year, or you assume there are. And then you have plant services, which involves the plant factory maintenance and the heating and lighting, comes to 1 million, and that's for 20,000 square foot. Now all of these can get very important here because we're going to break it down even further. You can see how this is a little more complex than what we're doing with plant-wide. So step 3, okay, is to add these up and figure out the overhead rate. So that's what we're going to do later on down the road here. Step 3, it says we're determining the activity and make sure it's identified with the factors that drives the cost and the proper measures of the activity. And once we do that, then we take the overhead cost assigned to the pool and we divide it by the expected activity level. And if you remember back for craftsmanship, we had $600,000 budgeted, and we thought we would use 30,000 direct labor. So it comes up to $20 per direct labor hour to be assigned to that product. And that's how you do each one of them. You would break that down for each one of them. So now let's look at the entire determining that rate. So if we look at direct labor, we just figured that one out. Craftsmanship at $20 per direct labor hour. Batches, the setup was $2 million divided by 200 batches. So each setup is $10,000. Design was 1.2 million at 10 designs, so each design would be 120,000 square feet. You're looking at 1 million divided by 20,000 square foot, so it's $50 per square foot. Again, you can see this is a little more complex. And here is another one of their graphs that shows how you're going to apply all of these to each one of the products as they're laid out. And then step 4 is to assign the overhead costs to the cost objects, which means we're going to assign the cost to the product, okay? So overhead is allocated to standard go-karts, and the activities consumed times the activity rate. So we have 25,000 direct labor hours times $20. So we're saying that $500,000 of this overhead is going to be associated with the standard go-karts. And it kind of breaks down like this then. So now we have craftsmanship at 25,000. We have setup at 40 batches. What are we doing here? We have design modifications. There's 0, and there's plant services. It looks at and says, oh, well, standard go-karts take up 12,000 square foot. So that's what we're going to apply the overhead at. We've got this 25,000 direct labor. We have $40 or 40 batches. They're going to have 40 different setups here. And that's going to be multiplied times that 10,000. So each one of these are laid out for the standard and for the custom. And you can see over here on the custom, it's going to get all of those design dollars. Whereas in the plant-wide, some of those design dollars would also be used for the standard when that's not really the case. So it sort of gives you a skewed look at the cost. So you multiply these out and come up with 1.5 million for the standard, and you come up with 3.3 million for the custom made. And this is where it gets interesting. We're going to divide it by the unit so I know how much per unit. So it's 300 per unit for the standard go-kart and 3,300 for the custom. And that makes a little bit of a difference here. Looky here. All of a sudden, using the plant-wide method, it was $720. And if we use the activity-based method, it's only $300. And most likely this activity-based is more accurate for the standard. Custom, just by the name, kind of says that it's a more expensive product because it's being custom made, almost like a job. And that's why I like to say this method combines process cost and job cost and really can hone right down into the cost. So this gives you a very, very different picture than this one up here as you look at that and the way things are laid out. And that's what we're going to be doing. These are kind of fun. I obviously have little tables to help you with this. So looking at the advantages and disadvantages, you've got, it's much more accurate as you look at it. I mean, just comparing the custom to the standard go-kart. It's a more effective overhead cost control. It's easier to get in there and say, oh, we need to lower this. Why is this one so high? what needs to change here. And you've got focus on relevant factors. It's more, i.e., think of the custom go-karts. And they get all the design charges because they have to design each one of them because they're custom, whereas the standard was designed at the beginning and never had to be redesigned. You fit a better management of the activities, and it brings in the cost of quality. Disadvantages is, number one, it's kind of expensive to implement and maintain, and there's some uncertainty in the decisions made. It's definitely not accepted by GAAP just because it mixes the costs together and you can't really tie them as well as you can. This is kind of an overview of everything we just did. Here's step one, where we've got the costs set up and divided it by the number of setups. So we come up with $300 per setup. We have the material handling costs, and we have depreciation costs. See, each one is using different ways. So then we assign it to the correct activity pool. And from there, it's allocated out. Now, it's a lot of numbers spread all over the place. And I think you will probably have to do a couple of these before they really sink in and make sense. So that is activity-based. And now I need you to watch the participation points video, and we'll be good to go for Wednesday.